Coming up on Mountain News at 5:30, police officers in Virginia try to serve a search warrant at a house when violence erupts. And Israeli forces begin moving into a Hamas stronghold. The latest on operations on the ground in Gaza and a plea from the families of hostages visiting the nation's capital.
Plus, we are tracking some wintry mix in the short term, but maybe some thunderstorms by this weekend. Your first alert forecast coming up as Mountain News at 5:30 starts now.
Dedicated to southern and eastern Kentucky, this is WYMT Mountain News at 5:30.
Good evening, I'm Steve Hensley. A very close call for police officers last night in Arlington, Virginia, who were trying to serve a search warrant when a house suddenly exploded. 56-year-old James Yu has been identified as the owner of the duplex and the person whose actions brought police to the home. CBS's Nicole Skanka has the story.
Just before 8:30 Monday night, Arlington police were attempting to execute a search warrant after a suspect inside this house allegedly fired multiple rounds from a flare gun hours earlier. And just as police approached, the powerful blast unleashed debris, including its roof and walls, from the multi-story house into the sky, with flames visible from blocks away.
I've never had a sound wave shock like that. I thought something had happened on my house.
Police say the first 911 calls came in around 4:45 Monday afternoon after reports of shots being fired from inside the house.
As the suspect began discharging several rounds from a suspected firearm inside the house, officers could not locate the source of the suspected gunfire or its intended target.
A neighbor across the street caught the explosion on cell phone. In the aftermath, police and fire officials rushed to the chaotic scene. Miraculously, only 3 officers suffered minor injuries requiring no hospitalization.
The suspect was inside the residence at the time of the explosion, and he is presumed at this point to be deceased.
Both the FBI and the ATF are assisting in this investigation. Nicole Skanka, CBS News, Arlington, Virginia.
Authorities in Portland, Oregon are trying to identify a man who apparently drowned in floodwaters. Emergency crews were unable to rescue the man, who was seen struggling in a creek yesterday. A friend of the man says he was helping homeless campers in the area when he got too close to the water and was swept away. Witnesses say the man was holding on to a couch cushion as he was carried downstream.
Well, we are tracking some soggy, also gloomy weather across the mountains into this Tuesday evening. Here's a live look at First Alert Pinpoint Doppler, and that moisture continues to increase as we go into this evening. Zooming into the Cumberland Valley, a few light to moderate showers in Pulaski County. Also moving into downtown London for Laurel County, into Rockcastle, also Jackson County as well. And same story in the Big Sandy Valley, more light to moderate showers. Pushing into Prestonsburg for Floyd County. Also a first alert in downtown Pikeville. Those showers not too far away as we go into the rest of this evening. Those current temperatures are chilly, but we are above freezing. Most of us in the middle to upper 40s, up to 48 for London, 43 in Jackson. But we are already down to 37 over in Wise. We're going to keep a close eye on those higher elevations as we go into tonight, because as the sun sets and the atmosphere cools, we are watching out for that rain to change over to some wintry mix. Also a few snowflakes as well, especially above 2,000 feet. But notice those low temperatures, they are above freezing in the middle to upper 30s. So we are not expecting those widespread impacts. And then some more above average weather on the way by Thursday, Friday, and maybe a few thunderstorms by this weekend. All those details coming up in just a few minutes. Steve?
Cameron, thank you. An Israeli commander is calling today the heaviest day of fighting for his troops since the ground operations in Gaza began. Civilian casualties continue to grow. So does the pain of families of Israeli hostages still in the grips of Hamas. CBS's Natalie Brand reports from the White House.
The Israeli military is moving deeper into southern Gaza Tuesday, striking targets in and around the city of Khan Yunis, considered a Hamas stronghold.
Every zone has a color, which is based on intelligence.
Israeli defense forces say they are trying to mitigate harm to civilians
and try and make movements and ask for people to move in order to minimize harm to these civilians.
But many Palestinians say they have no place to go, no supplies, and constantly fear bombardment. We are living between life and death, this mother cries. We may die at any moment. The U.S. plans to help create a field hospital inside the Gaza Strip for wounded civilians.
The White House says it remains focused on surging humanitarian assistance while also supporting Israel and bringing the remaining hostages home.
Every minute that goes by, their chances to keep on being alive are decreasing.
Some of the families of hostages held by Hamas returned to Capitol Hill Tuesday. They say their hearts break every day.
Just this past week, we got horrible news as it dribbled in that 4 different people were dead that we hoped were still alive in Gaza.
Families are pleading that the Red Cross be allowed to visit some 130 hostages still believed to be in captivity. Natalie Brand, CBS News, the White House.
President Biden says Hamas's refusal to release the remaining young women broke the pause in fighting. The president said all hostages must be released immediately and called on international leaders and organizations to forcefully condemn sexual violence perpetrated by Hamas militants. FBI Director Christopher Wray says his agency is working around the clock to prevent potential domestic attacks by Hamas or its sympathizers. In testimony before the Senate Judiciary Committee today, Wray said while there is no information about a direct attack by Hamas, the FBI cannot discount the possibility. Intelligence sources are concerned that the October 7th attack on Israel was designed to mobilize followers of Hamas all around the world.
Given the steady drumbeat of calls for attacks by foreign terrorist organizations since October 7th, we're working around the clock to identify and disrupt potential attacks by those inspired by Hamas's horrific terrorist attacks in Israel.
The FBI director is pushing senators to reauthorize Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, which is set to expire in a few weeks. The U.S. Supreme Court says it will not resolve a key question about the Americans with Disabilities Act. It notes the plaintiff has dropped her case, so the matter is moot for now. She's self-appointed ADA tester Deborah Laufer, who used a hotel website to allege noncompliance. The unanswered question is whether such a suit is permissible from a non-hotel guest. The court says it could respond differently if a similar case comes up later. Representative Patrick McHenry will not seek re-election. That's coming from an inside source today, but the Republican from North Carolina will finish out his term. McHenry's a notable figure in the GOP after serving as Speaker pro tem this fall. He's an ally of former Speaker Kevin McCarthy and chair of the Financial Services Committee. McCarthy has also announced his decision not to seek re-election. For now, federal border agents are prohibited from cutting or removing razor security wire along the U.S. southern border. Yesterday, the 5th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals granted Texas a temporary stay in the state's fight against the Biden administration. The razor wire was installed through Governor Greg Abbott's Border Security Initiative. The defense no longer plans to call Eric Trump as a witness in the New York fraud case. Attorney Chris Kise says the team is streamlining its approach to the civil matter. Its remaining witnesses are former President Donald Trump and an accounting expert. The 2 oldest Trump sons and their father are defendants in the fraud case against the Trump organization. The former president is expected to come to the courtroom Thursday and testify on the stand on Monday, December 11th. Former Representative Liz Cheney has a new book out, and it comes as she may be considering a third-party run for president. The former Wyoming lawmaker told the Washington Post, quote, "Democracy is at risk with former President Trump's continued grip on the Republican Party." Cheney's book, Oath and Honor, a Memoir and a Warning, was released Tuesday. An ardent critic of former President Trump, Cheney continues to warn of Trump's grave threat to democracy. In the wake of an off-duty Alaska Airlines pilot trying to deliberately crash a flight in October, the FAA is looking into policy changes. New pilot mental health policies could be coming soon. The Federal Aviation Administration has announced a special mental health rule-making committee. It will consist of experts from both the aviation and medical communities. They are looking at how to encourage pilots to report and seek care for mental health issues. Coming up on Mountain News at 5:30, one of the most important lessons we can pass on to kids is how to save. Tips to help you set them on the right path.
Plus, we could see some flakes later on tonight, but temperatures reach the 60s by this weekend. Those details on the way after this break.